Welcome back to Between the Before and After, a podcast about the stories that shape us. I'm your host, Coach John McLernan, and each episode I bring you an inspiring guest with a moving story that shines a light on the power of the human spirit. I'm excited to share this story with you, so let's dive in. All right, what would it be like to have 5 kids in the 21st century? I think this feels like a bit of a challenge. I've got 1, and already that felt like busy enough. And Chris here has 5. Not only that, he's able to do what he does part-time, so he can spend most of his time being a dad, which sounds pretty incredible, actually, in a life that a lot of people would like. So we're going to explore Chris's story and figure out how he got to this place where this is now what he's doing here. So welcome to the show, Chris.
Oh my gosh, Jonathan, thanks so much for having me. Yeah, you say 5 kids, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's wonderful, kids. If y'all are listening, it's wonderful.
Yeah. What ages are your kids?
They're 15 to 22 now. And so they're all 6.5 years apart. And so, just full on like littles, then full on elementary, full on middle schoolers, high schoolers. Now we're getting to that space where honestly, they're really awesome kids, and they have been for a long time. But like, I really love it. Like we can travel with them. We can have fun with them. We can go places with them. Like, they're cool humans. And parenting is work, just like anything is. But I got cool humans to hang out with. That's a huge win, Yeah.
And for those who are watching the video feed here, Chris, you look relatively young. I don't see a lot of gray hair. Don't see a lot of wrinkles. I was like, man, 5 kids in their 20, like you could pass for being in your like mid 30s, but I'm going to.
Oh, thanks so much. Thanks. Is there a filter on here? I should look. Where's the filter on this feed? I want to make sure.
Yeah, filters, man. I've always felt like I don't want people to be like disappointed when they meet me in real life. If they see like this perfectly, I'm like, no, I got some bags under my eyes. I got a kid. I sleep 5 hours on a good night, like, because he's a great kid, but he's not a great sleeper. And so, I don't want people to be like, oh, I thought you looked like, it's like, no. This is me in real life.
I don't have any filters in any of our cameras in the studio or out here, and I feel the same way, because I'm like, when they see me speaking live, they like come down, meet me in the hallway. They're gonna be like, "What the crap? This guy's not 22. Wait a second."
Yeah. I like to be real and just kind of human in the world here. And so, we're going to explore your story here and kind of how you got there. So it turns out you're not actually in your mid 30s. I assume you've crossed the 40 mark. Is that a safe bet, or did you get started young?
I turned 46 next week.
Okay. Well, probably people will be wondering, well, what's your secret to like raising 5 kids and still managing to look reasonably youthful? Is there a secret?
You got to moisturize, baby. You just got to take it.
That's what I'm doing wrong. Dang, I gotta admit, like, I think the moisturizer market for men really like took off in the last 10, 15 years.
Oh, it's rocking. I know these Old Spice commercials are freaking hilarious. There's so many good, like, I'm just loving it. Yes, moisturize. And the commercials are funny too. I think can I just dive in on that? Like the secret for me to staying, oh my gosh, I'm hesitating saying this, staying young. I feel like saying that, but when you say that, I'm like, yeah, but the calendar doesn't lie. So yeah, almost 46. But regardless of your capacity for workouts or your love of a good green salad or whatever, I think so much of this starts in our heart, in our mind, and making, for me, as someone who's struggled a lot with severe depression and anxiety and suicidal tendencies and things that kind of drag you down and can age you really quickly, and the habits and processes that come along with that don't add a lot to your life either. The things that I've been able to do through really good therapy and talking to really good people who've helped me like actually make right changes in my life have been keeping my heart young. I'd say that's one of the biggest things that I keep going back to, like making daily choices to do something that makes me laugh even when I'm stressed, and do something that makes me go out and try a new experience when I'm just too tired to try anything. Like, those are the moments that I'm like, I'm really glad I did that. I didn't want to at the beginning, and now I feel like I've just gotten better. Even if just for a moment, it's a good moment,
I love that. And I can enter that, like, at the time of recording this, my wife and I are going to take a trip over to South Australia. Normally I'm from Canada, but my wife is from Australia. So we're been over here escaping the winter and spending some time with her parents so they can get to know my little boy. But we're going to head off into the outback here shortly. And we haven't spent much time there. And there's not a lot there. It seems like there's not a lot there in this dusty red desert. You're going to drive a few hours through like nothingness to get to like these little oases here. But we want to go there and we want to check it out and be able to say like this is something incredible. And it wasn't a lot of fun getting here, but now that I'm here, I'm really glad I made the effort to get to this place.
Yeah, definitely a place you want to stay for a while, not a weekend trip, right?
Yeah, yeah. And so, when you started in life, as a young person, did you imagine, first of all, that you're going to be like raising 5 kids, and did you imagine you're going to be some sort of digital coach, teaching people how to do what it is that you do, or what were you kind of picturing, your life playing out like?
That's a really good question. I don't think I've ever said this on a show before or any platform. This is going to sound so silly. Okay. I've been an entrepreneur since I was a kid. Like, I know I'm an entrepreneur. It's in my DNA. I like built my first business when I was 11. Okay. So I do this. Most of them have not been successful. Okay. Anybody who's in entrepreneurship who tells you, oh yeah, I've been winning. I'm running 5 businesses, crushing it. That's bullshit. Sorry. Your episode just became explicit. Okay. Sorry.
The show is rated explicit. So we're
all may as well dive in deep now. So that's just not real. Entrepreneurship is a failure-based game. You just got to freaking know how to get back up and do it again. And you got to have the spirit and the attitude to keep going. And interestingly, a lot of people who are in entrepreneurial spaces or high levels of like energy output, success, some type of high level like leadership, whatever, they've come from really hard backgrounds. That is a really common theme. And I think that's part of I don't want to just say the DNA of an entrepreneur, because that's like what you're born with, but it's part of the environment that your DNA has latched onto. Learning to survive and learning to thrive in difficult situations really creates something in a human. And that's a special thing. So I know you talk to people on this show that have been through difficult times. Like we all have our stories. Own that shit. Like that is your story. Yeah. And that is really hard. And I'm really sorry for you. And I'm really sorry for me. I would never choose to pull the books off the bookshelf of my life and read those by choice. But that's not the way life works. The books are handed to you and you got to make it through the end. And that's a cool opportunity to do something awesome. So hang in there. Let's talk about this.
And I'd like to say that I've never met a remarkable person who had an easy life. And that's often what I remind myself. And you're right. Every one of us has a story, and everyone has a story worth sharing. And of course, that's why we do this here. And so, what was your first business at the age of 11? What did you decide? Okay, I want to do this.
All right. So it was cutting grass, right? Straight up. Yeah. In a neighborhood, there's grass to be cut. People don't want to do it. I live in Memphis, Tennessee. It's hot and horrible here. Okay. So what I did early on.
Great marketing, by the way. Come to Tennessee. It's hot and horrible here. You'll hate it.
Yeah. Anybody who's thinking about moving to Memphis, just don't come in August as your first trip. That's gonna push you away. So I traded my next door neighbor, 3 neighbors down to the left. I traded them a lawnmower for working on their yard, cutting their yard all summer long. All right. I'll cut your yard all summer long, 20 something weeks worth of it. And I get the lawnmower. At the end of the summer, it's mine. And during the summer, I get to keep it at my house. I'll maintain it. I'll keep the oil changed. I'll do the stuff. That was the deal. They're like, sweet. We've been wanting to get out of the lawn cutting thing for a while, so you can have it. And if you quit on us, who cares? We're hiring a service anyway. So I got a lawnmower. I got equipment. I got scale. I got a system with that move. At 11, I didn't know what that was or how to call it that, but that's what it was. And then I could take that system, that machine, and I went out and I found 3 or 4 other people like within walking distance right there and cut their yards. And all of a sudden I got to scale up and use someone else's resources to do it. Oh my gosh, there's so many big businesses that do that. I just didn't know what I was doing yet. And then the next year I was like, okay, I need to have another lawnmower probably. And oh my gosh, I'm starting to get referred to people who are outside of my walking distance. And so I started figuring out how to build and formulate a client base built around my house. So before long, I had 25 or so like clients within 2 blocks of my house.
Yeah.
And I couldn't keep up. So when I was 13, I hired my first team member. When I was 14, I hired a driver. And when I was 21, we sold the business with 3 crews. and tons of clients in a very tight geographic region, the perfect lawn business to sell. I didn't know any of that going into it. And it was not by design that it was
Yeah,
so
yeah,
successful. It was just that I started learning and hacking away at it. And any entrepreneur or anything you're doing, if it's weight loss, if it's mental health, if it's relationships, if it's business, if it's something you're going to do that's like some adventure you want to plan, hack away at it. No failure is going to come, and dive in deep. Look for the failure points and
yeah,
jump over them. Like, do it. Do the
yeah.
work.
I love that, because you're also describing like an 8-year, 10-year timeline here. And especially today, in the 21st century, we're so accustomed to things coming very quickly. And I think about how, with the idea of an overnight success, we see in media showing these people that they've achieved this here, and it looks like it's happened overnight. And in fact, it's something that took place over time. There was a hard road with a lot of lessons along the way to get to that place. And
Mhm.
just to plug a little bit about what I do, when I started out in sort of the nutrition coaching and weight loss space, I was like a typical macros, meal plan, training plan kind of coach. These are the tools we give people and so on. And it took going through my own struggles, my own issues, to discover that these were just like tools. It's not what people actually need. And I started to uncover this idea of what I call like brain driven weight loss, really. And it was about figuring out how our brain actually works. But I had to go through all the hard stuff myself, figuring out why can I know what to do and not do it, and so on. And so I just share that as an example of like, this is something that doesn't necessarily come easily. And if you're an entrepreneur just like starting out, if you're in your first year, I mean, it's like hard, in a sense. I don't want to say like don't worry about your numbers, but I want to say like don't worry about your numbers in the first year. First,
Mhm.
most businesses don't make it to that point. If you're still alive and kicking after the first year, you're onto something good here. Now, you did say something kind of heavy, and we sort of glossed over it just a little bit here. But you mentioned dealing with some mental health challenges around anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, things like that. And of course, listening to you today, I mean, I hear a very positive, a very energetic person. But when did you first sort of bump into this kind of stuff?
Early teens. I grew up in a really abusive home, and
Okay.
I didn't know, when you're a kid, you don't know what you're in. I don't
Mm,
think as a kid that you know how good your situation is or how bad your situation is. And you're just a kid, right? I mean, you're just looking for the chance to go outside, play on the playground, watch the next movie,
yeah.
play the next video game, whatever.
Yeah.
And so early teens, I was like getting more and more into depression. I just didn't know what to call it then.
Right.
Dealing with anxiety. As looking back, I know. Oh, that's what that was. And then, kind of middle teens, late teens, I was definitely on the track of like actively picking up sharp instruments and figuring out if there was a way I could end my life with those things. Um,
Mhm.
I, yeah, hard times, sexually abusive, emotionally abusive, spiritually abusive, just really, really tangled up family. So as I grew, started like you went to college and then got a job and started selling stuff, started selling financial products. I was 27 years old before I like figured out, oh my gosh, like I need help. And it was, I remember sitting, it was October, a fall day. We had a couple of kids at that point, and I remember like putting the kids down to bed. And at that stage, I'm so scared to hold my own children. This is just going to go for it here. I'm scared to hold my children in my lap because for me growing up, there was a lot of crap that went with that in a sexually abusive home.
Mm,
And I was scared that I was going to do that to my kids because like you just don't know how to deal with it. I remember going like I'm depressed, I'm suicidal at this point. I just don't know why my life is collapsing around me. I can't function half the day at work. Like I'm just sitting there staring at the wall. I'm crying when I get in my car. And I remember going and sitting by the edge of the bed and just sobbing and telling Jill, my wife, like, I'm done. I'm actively looking for a way out. And I don't mean of the marriage or the family, I mean of
mhm.
life. Like I'm looking to end this, just letting you know it's coming. I don't know what else to say. I'm so sorry. We have life insurance. Like, I don't know where else to go with this. And she really like pushed me towards going and talking to a therapist. And I thought that therapy wouldn't work
Mm,
because I had I had been going to a therapist for several years to get help because my therapist I was in the church at that point. This is not a religious conversation at all, but I was in a church at that point, and my therapist was a minister who was skilled at at helping people, right? It turns out it was my dad. So he was saying everything was fine. You're good. Let's keep moving. Let's not talk about this. My therapist was my abuser. My therapist as an adult was my abusive father, like so fucked up.
No kidding.
Ultimately,
Wow.
I went to someone else, and within like 5 or 10 minutes, this therapist's name is Chuck. He was like, take me back a little bit. Like, tell me your story a little bit. I was like, everything we say in here stays in here, right? Because I don't want to mess anybody's world up. He's like, yep. I told him a little bit what I just told you. And he was like, we need to kind of just dive in there for a minute because I think we got a place to start. And over the next several years, Jill and I like learned how to unpack our backgrounds and unpack our childhoods.
Yeah.
And unpack our families and take everything apart and put it back together in what's become a really beautiful thing, but was then like I honestly thought I would like rip in half as a human. There was no way to handle the pressure. And lots of good and bad choices as on my own through all those stages, just reeling through everything. But ultimately, I've become not a whole person. I've become a person. I'm going to cry saying that because I'm not whole. I don't know if any of us are whole people. I don't know what that actually means. We all have dings and dents. We're all missing a few door panels. We all got a lumpy tire floating around here on our vehicles of life. But I know who I am, and I know how to serve my family. I know how to love myself. I know how to be part of a community, and I know how to be what I want to be, who I am today. And that's a huge deal. I'll take that to the bank any day. And that's what I want to be the rest of my life. I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad I can say that and actually mean it.
Yeah, that's incredibly powerful. And I appreciate your courage just in sharing that. I think there's so many other people out there who have experienced something similar to what you've gone through, who maybe have not even heard of, finding a voice, finding a therapist who understands. And I think there's something really crucial here as well. It's like not every therapist is the right therapist for you, for starters. And in your case, it was really messed up. But I mean, not every therapist is the right therapist for you. And it's okay to go until you find someone that's like the right fit for what you've been through.
Yeah.
And you've been through some seriously heavy stuff. And
I've been through probably 7 or 8 therapists over the past couple of decades. That's 19, 15, 16 years ago, whatever. Math is bad. So, but you're going to find the right or wrong therapist. Don't give up. And then you might find a therapist who helps you for a season of your healing. And then you realize, oh, this person helped me to this stage. Now I need to go to the next stage. And that's okay.
Yeah. I'm curious, what helps you to not, a lot of people are ashamed of their past, even though it's a past they wouldn't choose. And they look at it and they think, well, because there's this idea that I'm the reason this stuff happened to me. And it's like, man, you were a kid. You were a kid. You didn't pick this. How do you get past the shame of what you experienced to get to the place where in a public platform like this, you're able to share your story and touch the hearts of many, many people?
I want to say it's community, whether whatever happened to you is like as a child or as an adult. As an adult, we make our own choices, but we don't create every choice that we're pushed into making. Okay. So as a kid, you can pass the buck to the adults around you legitimately. I mean, let's just be honest. Adults should be protecting us.
Yeah.
As an adult, there's often situations that we're put into that we find ourselves in that we're like, oh my gosh, the people around me and the things I'm doing are not the choices I want to make. And that's part you, part them sometimes. It's complicated. I get it. So I want to say 2 things. Number 1, go find a professional that's seen 1,000 of your situations play out in life and ask them what's real. You can't see what's real from your current situation. Don't take on anything until you talk to a professional and help sort out, this is for me to work on, and this is for all those other people who I need to like deal with in a different way. That's for them to work on. That's not my crap. Own that separation. Talk to a professional. That's number 1. Number 2, community. Jonathan, the reason we're having this conversation, the reason I agreed to be on your show, the reason my team flagged it and said, hey, this Jonathan guy has the real deal, is because this is what's helped me survive. My first podcast started in 2013 called I Share Hope. And it's still out there. We haven't recorded an episode in probably 5 years, but we get comments on it all the time. We interviewed 125 world leaders who were using hope in some way, that whether it was through their faith, their religion, their power, their money, their just willpower, their athletic ability, where they were born, whatever. Just they were people of hope. Because when I started that, I was not a person of hope. That community of people changed my life because they were willing to show up on my podcast. I was a nobody. I still am in the world. They were willing to show up. I got heads of state, Olympians, Nobel laureates, heads of homeless shelters who were homeless for 20 years and now we're leading homeless communities, tribal leaders, Olympians, like you name it, showing up, talking to me, like answering questions about hope, why they have it, how they use it, why is it productive, why is it real versus bullshit. Like those people changed my life. Jill changed my life. My kids changed my life. My closest friends who knew I was going to change my life. It's the community around you. And that is, man, you ask, why am I able to like step up and talk about this stuff? It's because so many people have done the same thing for me and invested in me this way and given me a chance to then speak back. And now it's normal to me because you, dear listener, right now, dear viewer, like whoever you are, wherever you are right now, you are okay. You're normal. You're not an oddball because of what's happened to you or what you've been involved in. There are billions of us on this planet. There are millions of people who've experienced what you've experienced. You're not alone. Find your people. Find your people.
So important because it seems to be this celebration of I did this myself. You know, we live in, and I think about how it's like social media has really sort of pushed this self-made idea, and you know, we're not, as human beings, I don't believe we're wired to live in isolation at all. You know, we wouldn't be sitting here talking over the internet, video conferencing, you know, if it wasn't for, you know, someone like Nikola Tesla, who's like, let me try something besides DC and let's try this alternating current idea. You know, I'm getting into my physics nerdery here, but anyways, you know, like we have enjoyed a level of, you know, to some degree success in life, but we're only here because this guy had this visionary mind to go, let me explore this concept and see what can happen. So the idea that any one of us is like self-made or I did this myself is like the biggest, I think really one of the most damaging myths that we can ever really buy into, because it takes us away from, you know, the thing that's so crucial you've just been describing here, community and our great need of that, and how it elevates you and makes you better. And you wouldn't be doing what you're doing without that.
So true.
And so I'm curious then, how did you meet your wife, Jill? And when you met her, you know, maybe you didn't spill us on like the first date or something, but, you know, at some point in time, it comes out like, this is the things that I'm wrestling with in life. And was she aware of that before you got married?
She was aware of it right before we got married. I told her while we were engaged a very small piece. And then she was fully aware when we were 27. We've been together since we were 17. Okay. So we got married when we were 21, had our first kid when we were 22, 23, somewhere in there. And so we kind of played life pretty fast. And she didn't really know the depth of all this stuff until we were 27. And so by then we had a lot of track record. We were 10 years into just like being together in so much relational capacity. But she was pretty blown away and shocked actually, because me and my family of origin, my parents, my sisters, innocent, all this stuff, but me and my family of origin, like I kept that such a secret that she had nobody knew. And that's the deal with dark secrets, right? Secrets do really well in the dark. But when you pull them in the light, it freaks everybody out. It's nasty, sticky, icky, and moldy. But drag it out in that sunshine, dump a bucket of Clorox on it, and let's start scrubbing, you know?
I often say in the coaching work that I do, and it's not that I try to play therapist. I have a background in psychology, among other things. Never thought I'd be using it in this capacity. It was marketing psychology, but it's amazing the crossover. But creating space for people to wrestle with their demons in the light,
Mhm.
being able to look at them free from the lens of judgment. There's a time and a place for discernment and for judgment, but free from judgment, where we can say, you know what, I want to understand this, because judgment just makes us want to hide away. Like talk about secrets thrive in the dark, and it's like when these sort of ugly parts of us come to the surface, these parts that might shock other people and might get us, isolated or ostracized from the community that we're in, to create a space for somebody to be able to go, okay, I can actually talk about this. And like I said, I don't play therapist, but I allow people to talk about whatever they want to when I'm coaching them. And it's incredibly powerful. And the stuff that's come out is, I figure I can't really hear anything, or I don't think I'll hear anything that will really shock or surprise me. Even your story, as surprising as it is, you're right. It's not an isolated incident. The number of people that I meet that have struggled with things like health and weight loss and stuff like that because of this in their background, and they think it's because they don't know what they're supposed to eat. And I'm like, no, there's so much
Yeah.
more to it than this. And so,
Jonathan, I love that about what you do, because
yeah,
you're authentic that way. And for any of you, like, you're hanging out with Jonathan, you're not hanging out with me. You like his show. That's why you're here. So thanks for listening to me too. But like, you already know and trust Jonathan. If weight loss, he coaches a ton in the weight loss space. He coaches a ton in this space of like helping people actually change what's going on in their minds, not just with like the daily activity of what goes on, like food and exercise, because there's so much more to it. Lean into the person you trust. That is step one to finding a person to help you with anything. If it's your therapist, if it's Jonathan, if it's another coach in some capacity, find the person and lean in and start taking the steps.
Yeah. I think about like the way that our brain is wired, and for us to try to be vulnerable by ourselves, our primal biology really doesn't like this. Our primal brain really doesn't like this because, of course, vulnerable and alone equals my life is at risk. And so we'll keep this buried. But once you start connecting to somebody who is safe and who you can trust, who says, I've got your back, now it's safe to be vulnerable. Because we might think like, why is coaching even a thing in the 21st century, in the age of Google, the age of information, where everything I could ever share with you, someone else has probably shared it, maybe more eloquently? Why does coaching still exist? And it's because we're still human beings, and technology hasn't solved or figured that piece out, and probably never will, which is the wonderful, beautiful thing about being human.
So true. Yeah. I
Yeah.
love my people.
And so I'm kind of curious then, you've obviously mentioned the church and whatnot. Were you raised in a religious home, and did everything you've been through change your? I mean, obviously, it would have to some degree changed your idea on faith and kind of spirituality, and where did that take you?
Those are deep questions. And I want to say this, and I don't want to push anyone to or away from your beliefs or your faith. I just have so much respect for where people are in their individual lives. I think it's so important. For me personally, it was a roller coaster. I raised in a very religious family, obviously. I think there was some true faith in that family too. I think there was a lot of religiosity though, which was not truly lined up with faith. And there's a big difference there, right? And so I kind of pulled way back for a minute, for a few years. And then I totally got way back into my faith. It was a Christian faith. But then over the years, it's just not resonated for me. I'm shooting you straight here. This is a really interesting question set. I don't talk about this very often in public. It's not resonated with me. I'm not finding anything there for me. I'm definitely not shunning it. I'm not an atheist. I have no idea if there's a God or not. It's just, I just don't find anything there. I don't know how else to say that. And so, but Jill, my wife, and some of my kids are very like legit serious people of faith who have very beautiful faith experiences and stories. And I love that. And I sometimes wish that was my story. It's just simply not. So currently at this moment, I'm not a religious person. I'm not a person of faith. And I have no idea if that's where I'll be next year, but that's where I am today, if that answers your question. And I think for any of us, like right now, wherever you are in this moment, any of us in this conversation listening in or having the active talking mode here, be where you are in the moment. And I guess the only advice I have is be honest with where you are, and put aside the jadedness and the love or the hate or the attraction or dysfunction of any certain community. Be honest with where you are and be curious with where others are. And that takes away the judgment of yourself and the judgment of others. And it gives you an open mind to be able to say, okay, I know I am here and I know others are there. Let me ask questions. And that's where I'm at. And that's where I'm at in a lot of categories in life, a lot of communities and people that don't make sense to me that I want to make sense of. And I show up curious without judgment best I can. I don't know if that's possible as a human to be pure in that, but that's what I'm waking up trying to do every day.
You mentioned, at 27, you said to your wife, I'm actively looking for a way out. And this is one of the things, and I've had a few people on who've gone through experiences like this before, where this is where their brain is at, where it feels like they're, I guess I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it feels like there isn't another solution. It feels like that's the only way to escape everything that you're experiencing because you haven't found a solution in this life. And how did you get out of that space, and who helped you to get out of that space? Because I think there's many people out there who feel like this is the only option for me. I don't see another way out right now. And this is an opportunity to share a little bit of hope here. How did you find your way out of that space? And I just want to leave it at that and let you answer.
Okay. Yeah. I'm going to go back to, again, call a therapist, call a helpline. If you're really on the edge, call a suicide helpline. Is it 811? Is that the new
I believe
US national line? I don't know.
Canadian, but yeah.
I should know that. US isn't. Call a suicide prevention hotline. Like, call it. It's okay. The cops aren't fixing to come pick you up. It's okay. Just go talk to somebody. Call an online therapy place. I've never used BetterHelp, but I hear them all the time advertised on podcasting shows. I so freaking love that. Find a person. It's okay. Okay. That's step number one. Go talk to a professional. If I broke my leg running tomorrow, I wouldn't sit around for the next month thinking, oh my gosh, my leg's at this weird right angle. What's going on? Like, I'm so messed up about this. I should just cut my leg off. No, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I got to freaking go to the emergency room. Like, get some help. Yeah. Our minds are the same. It's just another body part. It's broken. It's messed up. It's got an injury. It's whatever. Don't overthink it. Go to the ER. That's all you got to do. Okay. That's step number one. Number two, I just want to say, if that's where you are right now, if you're really depressed, you're really down, and you're really thinking, is there a reason to stick around? I don't know what that reason will look like for you, but I didn't think there was a reason. I've talked to hundreds of people in the same space, and I'm not a professional. I've just been able to talk about it a lot with a lot of people. There's a reason. Your reason will show up. And you know what? It might not show up tomorrow. You might get a glimmer of it in a month. You might lose that glimmer in another day, and it might come back a little stronger the next day. It'll go up and down. Get ready for the ride. But do the work. Stay with this. If you're just listening in, I'm just struggling to talk. Let me get through this. I know that I'm here to help you know this right now. I know that I've been here to help other friends through this process. I know that I'm here as a business coach. I know that I'm here as a parent. I know that I'm here as a dad to my dog and my cat also. I'm here for real reasons. And I'm so fucking glad I'm here. And I didn't think I wanted to make it through it. But now I'm glad, and it took work. Stay the course. We need you. We don't need you to be a superstar today. It's not your job right now. You need to heal. Take your time. It's okay. Take your time. We need you. Yeah. Stay with it.
Yeah. And you talked about hope and how crucial it is to be able to move forward. And I love that you'd had a podcast that was really about sharing hope and finding hope, because that's the thing that keeps us going, is if we think that there is something, even if I can't see it right now, there is something, it's worth moving forward. And so,
by the way, that podcast was started without any hope. I started that podcast not intentionally starting a podcast. My therapist said, you need to talk to people who have hope and decide for yourself if it's real or not before you make a bad or good decision. Decide. So I started talking to people I thought had hope in my town. Then I started recording a few on my phone so I can listen to them later. And then some of my friends were like, oh my gosh, you should turn this into a podcast. And you'll hear, if you go back and listen to those episodes, you'll hear me actively telling these amazing humans, hey, I'm going to ask you 5 questions about hope, just so you know where I'm at. I'm still on this track. I'm still not sure where I'm going personally with this. Will you just answer the questions honestly, and the rest of us can make our own call? Like, it's a really raw process. So that was me. Ask questions, folks. Show up curiously. Ask questions.
So at 27, when you shared that with your wife, your marriage would have like forever changed. And I imagine it's been, we're looking about almost 20 years ago now. And I imagine it's been a roller coaster ride. One thing I really admire tremendously is the people who keep going together, because maybe there wasn't this idea that this isn't like a happily ever after rom-com where at this moment in time, 20, you've been together for 20, married for what, 26 years, been together for almost 30 years now. You got a lot of rubber on the road together, and a lot of ups and downs. Maybe times you wanted to throw it away. How do you keep it going?
We've come dangerously close to throwing it away a few times. Again, I'm going to go back to some really good professional help from a relationship therapy kind of standpoint. Had some good therapist counselors in our lives. I would say the number one thing that has helped us is we both have like made a legit commitment to stick it out. Unless somebody like we haven't cheated on each other. All right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just telling you where we are. Jill, if you listen to this, I don't think you have, right? We're sure, we haven't cheated on each other. Okay. So there's probably a few things that we legitimately would break the deal over.
Mm-hmm.
But we've stayed true to each other. Okay. But life comes and goes, and we are completely different people than we were when we got married, both of us. So I'm currently married to a girl that I didn't marry at age 21. She's a different human. I'm a different human. But we've determined early on, and we've recommitted this multiple times, not cheesy. I don't mean that. We've not like redone our vows or something. But we have like intentionally I'm here. I am Jill Williams. I am here. And Jill has said, I'm here. I'm not quitting. Let's sort this out. And so then it comes down to, do we want this to be the most fucked up relationship ever where we hate it for the rest of our lives? Or do we want it to be awesome? And when we got that decision in our plate, obviously we want it to be awesome. Okay. We're committed to making this work. What does it take to get back to awesome? And that's a lot of work. But coming at it from that perspective gives us a chance to both show up ready to learn, ready to own our own shit, and ready to like be gracious with somebody else's and work and do the process. Does that answer your question?
It does. And what a fantastic answer. I think, my wife and I, when we were first dating, like I was convinced in my heart that she's the one. Like there's something, you just meet someone and it goes click and you go, okay, I found that person. And I feel incredibly blessed to have found her. But we've had some times where like we made an agreement. We said, okay, like I think we're both pretty serious about this, and we both believe that if we're going to get into this, we're going to go into this without the intention of quitting. We're in this for life. Yep. Okay. So we made this agreement. We're not going to go to bed angry at each other. We have stayed up all night.
Yeah. We tried that for a while, and then we were like, yeah, screw this. We were like a month later, we're like, yeah, we're still ticked. We should call some help. Yeah.
Yeah. So, somehow, but I think why I'm sharing this is because there comes a point where it kind of just like what you just described here, where I go, okay, I have a decision to make here, because we're both pretty stubborn people. We can either throw away everything up until this point that we've like dedicated our lives to and probably regret that decision for the rest of our lives, or we can say, we haven't entirely figured this out, but what we do know is we want this to keep going. And we'll start from that place. We want this to keep going. And I think, I have something that all the money in the world can't buy, because I've invested nearly 20 years of my life into this relationship with her as well.
That's a big investment. Yeah.
All the money in the world could not replace her either. And so when I recognized, when it sort of dawned on me, like, because I was a bit of a lunkhead, in my early 20s, I was, powerlifting, heavy metal, motorcycle racing, kind of, hyper masculine, sort of overcompensating for the fact that I'm actually just an empath who likes to hug people, But so through all that, we're like, do we throw it away or do we keep it? And I think it comes to that place and you go, okay, If we know we're going to keep it, we don't have all the answers, but we're going to try to figure it out. So we're just going to start taking forward steps again together. And along the way, the answers are going to come. They're not going to come sitting here staring mad at each other. We might still have to work on it, but we give each other a hug and said, okay, we're going to keep going. And that that gets us through. And as you know, like raising kids while dealing with all that you were battling with in your head. Like, I am so grateful that, because I went through trauma, PTSD, binge eating, food addiction. Mm-hmm. I'm so grateful that I got the help I needed before my son was in the picture. Mm-hmm. Because now I feel like I'm an amazing dad to him. Like, I just, he's a toddler. He's emotional. He's all over the place. He's a beautiful kid. And I just think, man, I am so different in how I interact with him. Like, just yesterday, he was having a hard day. He's a toddler. He was tired and just chucking food out of his mouth and just feeling like, I don't want this. I don't want this. But what he was just like, I don't know what I want. All I know is I feel all these big feelings.
I felt that way yesterday too.
Yeah. Yeah. We still get that as adults, And I just thought to myself, I was like, this kid's not doing this to make my life miserable. Mm-hmm. He just doesn't have any other tools to say what he's trying to say and what he's feeling right now. And what he needs from me is not to get mad at him and smack him and tell him to shut up. He needs me just to sit there and be like, I'm going to help you regulate your nervous system. Even though you want to punch me in the throat, because he does that. He's like, whack. He's not actually aiming for my throat, but because he's in my arms, I'm like, I get it. You need me to actually be a present. And I just share that to say, like, I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to work through a lot of my stuff before kids were in the picture. And also I tip my hat to you and my admiration for you working through this while also trying to show up and be a dad and be a husband and be a professional. That's absolutely remarkable.
Thank you for saying that. Thanks for sharing your story too. You're doing a great job. Like, I'm super proud of where you are. You're doing great work.
Thank you. Chris, I imagine there's a lot more, and maybe this isn't going to be our last conversation. I've absolutely loved this. And I have to admit, this has taken an unexpected turn. I wasn't really sure when I first reached out, because of course your story isn't necessarily out there in an obvious sense for people to read. But, for some reason, because I'm not sure how we originally got connected, but I don't know if it was through Podmatch or some other way. But I've had a few of your messages and whatnot, and a few of your emails and things. And all of them now have like a different perspective, a different light on them, knowing more of your story and why you are the person today. I go back to, I've never met a remarkable person who's had an easy life. And so the thing that I always like to ask people at the end of the interview is, if people have listened to this, and imagine they would have, it's a heck of a story. We've got to this point in the story. If you could, give them just one thing that you would like them to take away from being a part of this and sharing in this conversation today, and those who are listening and watching, thank you so much for giving us the space to go through this conversation. It's been amazing. What would you like people to take away from this today?
That's super easy. I think from the tone of this conversation, find an independent person outside of your current situation who can help you take the next step you need to take. Even if you don't know what that next step is, who can help you define the next step. If that's a therapist, if it's a counselor, if it's someone you trust in your faith community or your local community, whatever it is, find a person outside of your current situation who you can trust and lean in onto, and just start talking and saying, here's where I am now. What should I do next? Where would you advise me to go? Critical that they're outside of your current situation, so they have no bias, no dog in the hunt, so to speak, to influence you one way or another. They're there purely just to give you clean, solid advice and counsel. Start there.
Love that. Chris, thank you so much for your courage and sharing your story today. It has truly been an honor being a part of this conversation.
Jonathan, it's great talking. Thank you so much for the space to do this for all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Between the Before and After. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave a review, because that helps this podcast to reach and inspire more people. I love exploring the stories that take place between the before and after, the powerful experiences that shape who we become, and I love human potential. I love the possibilities that lie within us. So whatever you may be up against, I hope these stories inspire you, because if you're still here, your story's not done yet, so keep moving forward.